On March 3rd, 2026, new footage of Hoover Dam spread online. It's quiet, but hard to ignore. The camera moves across the dam. It follows the bright white bathtub ring. Then it stops on a single vertical scar, high above the water, higher than it should be, a line you can't miss.
Debate continues over how to divide up water from the Colorado River. I wanted to dive deeper and take a closer look at the Hoover Dam and just how crucial it is to our state, our region, and the entire nation.
If you live in Los Angeles or Phoenix or Las Vegas, if you eat lettuce in January or almonds in August, if you flip a light switch and expect instant power, if you've ever seen sunlight glitter off a blue lake that shouldn't exist in the middle of the Nevada desert, what you are about to see may hit much, much closer to home than you think. Because on March 3rd, 2026, new footage from Hoover Dam began circulating online. Footage that is as stark as it is silent. A camera sweeps over the concrete face of the dam, follows the narrowing bathtub ring, streaked chalk white, blinding even in dawn's half light, and then fixes on a single, almost vertical mineral scar climbing skyward. A line, discolored and undeniable. A line that is not supposed to be that high above the waterline. The facts, in their cold precision, are these. Lake Mead, the nation's largest reservoir, the man-made oasis that made the Southwest possible, has dropped approximately 140 vertical feet from its previous high. And that white mineral line, slashed across the ancient canyon wall, is the evidence that the water has not come back up. It's not a fantasy, not a maybe someday. It's visible, measurable, and now, thanks to this footage, impossible to ignore. The story tucked away for decades in government reports and technical language is now exposed in broad daylight. The water is disappearing. And the mineral line, for those who can read it, is not a warning, it's a verdict. Everyone wants to know the same thing. If this much water is gone, with no recovery, not once in over 2 decades, what comes next? And what exactly did that camera, pointed straight at Hoover Dam's vanishing blue, reveal for all to see? Keep watching, because by the end, you will understand why people are whispering that the 140-foot drop at Hoover Dam is a decline nobody can stop. It starts, as these stories often do, not with disaster, but with an outline so vivid you can see it from miles away. The mineral bathtub ring, a term so casual, so domestic, that it almost shrinks the scale of what's at stake, cuts through Hoover Dam's heart. Stretching nearly 140 feet above the current waterline, this band isn't just a visual quirk, it's the record of how far Lake Mead has retreated. Think about what that means. A vertical drop taller than a 10-story building, exposed, naked against the canyon's flank, scorched white by years of relentless desert sun. This ring couldn't be painted whiter. And it's not a trick of lighting, not a seasonal oddity. It is the legacy of millions of gallons lost, foot by agonizing foot, over more than 2 decades. What the new footage captures, which even the best written reports can't, is the brutality of this retreat. There's nothing cinematic here, just stark silence and emptiness. The camera panning across rock that hasn't seen water since before some viewers were even born. A vertical mineral line marks where the water once stood, higher and deeper than most present-day visitors can imagine. How much water is gone? Enough that what was once an immense expanse of blue is now diminished, exposing barren canyon walls. Enough that the Colorado River, which carved this gorge over millennia, now laps listlessly at the dam's base, a slimmed-down remnant of itself. The most unnerving part? This decline didn't begin with a single catastrophic event. Not a biblical drought, not a breached dam, not a singular failure of engineering. It was a slow-motion vanishing, a grinding retreat that began quietly around the year 2000 and never paused. There was no siren that warned of the start, no headline that announced the beginning of a new era. Just inch by inch, year by year, the water receded. It crept into the margins of the American story, unnoticed. A quiet subtraction, visible only to scientists, boaters, and a handful of residents who remembered clambering down to the water's edge decades before. Weeks became seasons, seasons became years, and the receding blue only picked up pace. Since then, the elevation marker at Lake Mead has ticked down, year after year, interrupted by minor, fleeting surges, but always returning to the relentless descent. And in all that time, over 26 years, there has not been a single, lasting recovery. If you think this is just the cost of a couple of hot summers or a few dry years, the evidence caught on camera says otherwise. Why should a falling waterline in a canyon 3 states away matter to your fill-up, your groceries, or your air conditioning bill? Lake Mead is not just a reservoir. It's a balancing act, a gigantic gamble that turned barren canyons into a man-made artery, pumping life through the dry heart of the American West. When Hoover Dam first held back the Colorado in the 1930s, the word impossible was on every engineer's lips. A city of workers was summoned from every corner of Depression-era America. 60 stories of concrete went up, poured by hand, surrounded by nothing but rock and sky. Lake Mead swelled behind it, 26 million acre-feet of potential at full pool. It's hard to overstate what that volume meant. If you poured it across the state of Arizona, it would cover every inch with water 3 feet deep. If you bottled it, every person on Earth could receive thousands of gallons. Out of such a gamble, entire cities were willed into being. Las Vegas, the driest major city in America, thrives on little more than a slip of paper guaranteeing it a sliver of Hoover Dam's output. Phoenix, a metropolis where cacti bloom next to golf courses, grew on water channeled from a canyon hundreds of miles away. Southern California, Los Angeles, and vast swathes of its suburbs rely on the Colorado's borrowed bounty. The entire setup feels improbable. A river dammed, turned into electricity, piped over mountain ranges and through deserts to conjure up cities from arid landscapes. And because it worked, because the tap kept flowing and the lights stayed bright, few questioned whether it could eventually break. That white line exposed in the new footage is not merely a reminder of drought. It's a ledger, one that the 20th century wrote in water and concrete, and which the present is now erasing, foot by vertical foot. The stakes stretch far beyond Nevada and Arizona state lines. Lake Mead has been an IOU against the future. Communities, farms, industries, all shaped by federal compacts charting who gets what when the river runs low. But even the most carefully written agreements cannot conjure water that isn't there. How bad does it need to get before the system begins to crack? Focus in on the mineral scar in the dam footage, a harsh, vertical marker, not painted, but scored by absence. There is no ambiguity. This is not a seasonal shift, not a quirk of last week's rainfall, not a temporary inconvenience. It is the record of a lake that has dropped, and dropped again. A 140-foot vertical decline, captured in mineral streaks and memory. Not since the reservoir's earliest years has the water fallen so far. Even in the language of mega drought, the scale doesn't quite land. What the footage shows is this. The water didn't just dip for a season and rebound. It went down and has stayed down. The change is visible in concrete, steel, and stone. The intake towers, built to draw from a full lake, now stand awkwardly above the receded surface, their bases exposed to relentless sun. Docks, once bustling with tourists, now sit marooned on dry ground, their anchors stranded far from the lapping water. And the shade of the water, once a deep navy, fades each year toward a shallower turquoise. Since the year 2000, Lake Mead's elevation has dropped by roughly 160 feet. That number sprawls on a page, almost abstract. But in person, in pixels, those 160 feet stand between abundance and scarcity, between a system in balance and a system under threat. The footage pans across intake towers, now hovering, exposed, far above where the water once lapped. Power turbines run less efficiently. Less water equals less pressure and, inevitably, less electricity. Boats that once docked at floating marinas now rest on cracked earth. Boat ramps point uselessly toward what used to be waterline. And that white mineral band is no longer just a curiosity for visitors. It's a warning writ in stone. Every additional inch that Lake Mead drops brings the system ever closer to what engineers call dead pool. That's the moment when water can no longer flow downhill through the dam, when both power generation and crucial downstream water deliveries grind to a halt. Not from sabotage or engineering failure, but from immutable physical law. When will that point arrive? The raw facts captured by this footage speak for themselves. If the current pattern continues, it may come sooner than most are willing to admit. Here's the chilling truth. This 140-foot drop was not the result of a single catastrophic disaster. It has been a relentless, incremental erosion, an inch here, a foot there, compounding year after year for more than 26 years. Pause and consider that. Not once in that time, more than 2 decades, has the waterline rebounded in a lasting way. Not during wet winters, not through policy reforms, not via emergency government actions. Every hope to stabilize the lake has been checked by reality. Conservation, rationing, negotiations, all were tried. But the water keeps on dropping, the mineral scar keeps climbing, and the numbers do not lie. Simply put, this decline cannot be written off as an anomaly. It is not just residue of a couple dry years. It is the signal of a system moving past the point of easy return. Why didn't anyone stop it? Decades of official reports, dense with jargon, technical explanations, and endless appendices, warned this was a risk. But the conclusions were easy to ignore, until now, when a single camera forced the world to face what is plainly visible. Look at the marinas, now left high and dry atop barren dirt. Look at the intake towers, built to gulp water, now left presiding grimly over empty air. Look at what was once a blue ribbon of water, now pinched between gleaming cliffs scarred by loss. The dam has not failed, it's the supply that has. Now, every tap connected to Lake Mead's shrinking reservoir becomes a question, not an answer. Every American who drives a highway in the Sun Belt, who eats winter vegetables, or flips an air conditioning switch in July, is tied, silently but surely, to the fate of Hoover Dam's vanishing lake. The new footage doesn't just chronicle the decline of a single body of water. It is a visible line in the sand, an indicator of risks that are not temporary nor isolated to one place. Because when Lake Mead falls, the very foundation of modern Western life, water, food, energy, also teeters. The first domino is supply. Water allocation is no longer a question of want, but of can. Farmers in California's Imperial Valley, where lettuce, spinach, and carrots are grown for the nation, are being forced to fallow fields. Phoenix and its suburbs? Facing mandatory rationing. Las Vegas, a city synonymous with fountains and bright lights, now must pay close attention to every wasted drop. It isn't only the large cities that feel the squeeze. Every home, from sprawling subdivisions to modest downtown apartments, depends on a system designed with the assumption of abundance. Each step taken to conserve, brown lawns, empty pools, tighter regulations, reflects choices that once seemed unthinkable. As supply tightens, bargaining intensifies. Between states, between cities, across sectors, old compacts and legal agreements, hammered out in wetter times, creak under the pressure of new constraints. That white mineral line at Hoover is now the table for hard negotiations, and not every claimant walks away satisfied. Electricity, too, is at stake. Hoover Dam, once among the mightiest hydroelectric plants in America, generates less power with every lost foot of water. Lights might not blink out overnight, but with each lost foot of head, brownouts, brief, managed shortages become more likely. What happens when a city can't honor its contracts for power or water, not because of politics or profit, but because the source is physically disappearing? If the solution were as simple as just wait for a wet year, the last 26 years offer little comfort. Lake Mead's retreat is no temporary aberration. It is the condition we have come to expect, the new normal. Children born when the decline began have entered adulthood, and in all their lives, not a single lasting recovery has been seen. Those who remember Lake Mead at its highest, boating, swimming, fishing in blue water that seemed endless, now retell those memories as cautionary tales. Family photos show floating docks that today dangle above cracked earth. The scent of sun-dappled water at the marina has given way, by degrees, to the sharp smell of sun-baked stone. The mineral scar, captured by unmoving lenses, has only grown more obvious with each passing year. For decades, every emergency measure, calls for conservation, interstate negotiations, rushed water transfers, has done little more than slow the inevitable. The latest footage makes it clear. Each season, a little more blue vanishes, a little more white appears, and the timeline to Deadpool gets shorter. Nearly all the easy fixes have already been attempted. Less lawn watering? It's implemented. Charging extra for ornamental fountains? Enforced. So-called water cops now patrol neighborhoods with ticket books in hand. And yet, each annual tally brings worse news. There is no magic pipeline from the Great Lakes. There is no miraculous return to historic snowpacks. There is only a future that, for decades in a row, has yielded less and less water. This is not just Lake Mead's problem. This is the great reckoning of the American West. The cost of the vanished lake, the 140-foot drop, obvious to anyone who looks, is more than just a measure of lost water. It is a direct cost now being shouldered across every sector. Millions in Las Vegas, Phoenix, and Southern California rely either in part or entirely on water moving through Hoover Dam. What happens as growing populations lean harder on shrinking supplies? It's not just the big cities that hurt first. Rural towns and smaller communities, those with less legal clout and smaller budgets, lose access first, their taps running dry even as city lights twinkle on more distant hills. Some have seen flows diminish to a trickle, forcing residents to ration water for drinking and bathing, a scenario that would have been unimaginable a generation ago. Agriculture, the West's other lifeblood, is hit hardest. The fields and orchards that feed America, lettuce, almonds, citrus, rely on legal access to Colorado River water that now grows more questionable with every season. Each fallowed acre raises grocery bills for families nationwide, and each lost acre-foot represents a farm job at risk or a local business that may not return. Some farmers have been forced to uproot orchards that took generations to establish, selling off land or leaving it unused as wells and ditches run dry. Electricity is next in line. Hydropower is both clean and cheap, at least when the water is there. With 140 feet lost from Lake Mead, Hoover Dam's hydroelectric output drops. That means more reliance on fossil fuel plants and higher energy costs. Power bills rise, and managed blackouts, once unthinkable in modern metropolitan West, creep closer to reality. Utilities warn residents to prepare for flex alerts, periods of potential power cuts or higher prices. Factories, hospitals, and grocery stores weigh the cost of backup power, passing the costs forward. Tourism too suffers. The once legendary houseboat vacations and lakeside retreats are increasingly rare, as marinas dry up and formerly popular coves become mudflats. Local economies, hotels, restaurants, angling guides, lose out as water recreation shrinks. All the while, the looming fear remains. If the decline continues unchecked, the moment when Lake Mead hits Deadpool, where neither water nor power reliably emerge from Hoover Dam, becomes more than a distant possibility. Measured in lost opportunity, the cost is already in the tens of billions. All of this is there in the new Hoover Dam footage, unfiltered, relentless, and, above all, undeniable. A dam engineered for a millennium could find itself obsolete in under a century if the water runs out. Dreams built on guaranteed abundance now face the limits of a changing world. Still, the American West keeps growing. A new subdivision, a new golf course, each betting the old bargain will hold a little longer. But the mineral ring etched into canyon stone says otherwise. The water, absent for decades, is not coming back in volumes big enough to reverse the trend. Developers may still build, in hope that legal maneuvering or emergency intervention will suffice. But a growing number of experts warn that the era of endless expansion is coming to a close. Markets shake as buyers not only check schools and commutes, but also the future reliability of their water supply. What used to sound apocalyptic, the West will run dry, is now measured each year, foot by the evidence left in plain view. As legal agreements fray and reservoirs shrink, the most important question for every family, farm, and city planner becomes, what do you do when the water you counted on is simply, irrevocably, gone? There are no malicious actors here, no single villain, no direct culprit. Just the collision of a growing population and finite supply, the outcome of a gamble a century ago. For years, policy muddled through, negotiations over a shrinking pie, lawsuits over every drop, promises to conserve, often contradicted by bad luck in the weather. But the March 2026 footage does not equivocate. That white mineral band, about 140 feet tall, towering above the dam and desert floor, is a measure no wishful thinking can erase. Engineers can calculate how many gallons remain, how soon the turbines may spin too slowly, but every foot lost tips the entire system closer to a threshold from which there is no easy retreat. Deadpool is not a myth. It is a defined physical threshold, anticipated, monitored, and now visibly in reach on camera. What's left after that? The end of certainty. So what did the latest Hoover Dam footage actually reveal? A stark truth made undeniable. A 140-foot drop, white against stone and sky, marking the line where the West's dreams once gathered and now must reckon with hard limits. Here is what most people still struggle to admit. This decline did not pause, and so far, nothing shows that it will reverse. The old answers, waiting for a normal year, hoping for big snowpack, trusting that systems designed for abundance will adapt, have already been spent. Instead, Americans are left with a new and urgent question, echoing off Hoover Dam's battered face. When the red line finally stops, when there's no more bargaining and the water is gone, what happens then? In that silence, marked only by the wind across exposed stone, remains a story with only one ending for now. The decline nobody could stop has already begun, and the future of the West will be written in the shadow of the scar left behind.